The Serbian Guard of Volunteers does not go outside the borders of Serbia and is only convened when there is problems with the border. And that's what the guiding policy. Traditionally, it was always run by foreigners anyway, because the Serbs couldn't trust themselves. It was always, you know, the Serbian Guard of Volunteers after the First World War was run by Italians, French, and Germans there. So that's where we are at as far as that is concerned.
Thank you for this, let's say, offer to our country. And well, if we need you, we will let you know, of course, because I'm sure you have a lot of influence, well, let's say, among those people who are still ready to defend this country. And I would like to ask you this, because you said about Arkana's death. It was, let's say, assisted by the state or staged, or it was done by federal agency of security. Who did it? Was it done by, let's say, someone said that Milosevic thought Arkan would be, let's say, more than a bad witness for him in Hague process, so he decided to take him out. What do you think?
I said a state-sponsored assassination. I didn't say which state. And it certainly was not the Republic of Serbia, I can tell you, Montenegro, as it then was at the time. They had nothing. They were caught off guard as well as anything else. I have been on record in the past at putting the blame clearly on the United Kingdom, the SBS. The SBS were in Montenegro. They were there. I know the CIA were there quite a bit there, because we knew all about their activities during the time of the NATO bombing there. One of the reasons that Milosevic sent me to Brussels was specifically because I had good friendship there in Brussels, and we were well aware, extremely well aware of what the targets would be. And there was an incident where the RTS building was bombed and 17 people lost their lives. A few people lost their lives there. I was aware of that bombing before, but would you believe that at the time I couldn't communicate it to Belgrade because the phone lines went down from the Hilton Hotel in Brussels to Belgrade. They cut the lines for a short while. And so I only managed to forewarn, the government and the Ministry of Defence that the RTS building was about to be, blown, bombed. But we didn't quite manage to evacuate all the people at the time there. And when that incident occurred, I then decided that I would come back into Belgrade and stand my ground in Belgrade. And I lived in Jenic's apartment, a glass building. Everybody had vacated. I was the only person there. And that stopped NATO from bombing Jenic's and the Intercontinental Hotel there, because they would have had to kill a European Union citizen. And not that they give a flying Ferrari about that, but it would have been harder for them, to deal with that there. Let me tell you something else also that is quite amusing to show you how stupid and how negligent NATO were. Do you know why the building of the Chinese embassy was bombed by mistake, they said? Do you know why? Well, let me tell you. When I was in Brussels, I saw the maps of Belgrade, which NATO had for bombing. They were the old ones. They didn't include, because at that time it wasn't included in there. They were the old maps. And I thought, Jesus Christ, we're in the hands of mad people here. They're bombing people there. The Chinese, but for a whisker, did not retaliate, but for a whisker did not retaliate with a nuclear attack, on NATO that. Now, I can tell you that I dealt with the Chinese on that there. What we then did was the Chinese ambassador who was in Belgrade, I had him come to Jenic's with me for a while. And do you know where I moved him afterwards? to number 3, Lutica Bogdana, because they were going to bomb Arkan's house. And I put a stop to that. I said, Željka, let's move the ambassador to your house there for a while. I notified NATO that the ambassador he notified, and that's what kept Lutica Bogdana. And they were going to bomb Red Star ground as well. They had intentions to bomb that. And I remember talking to Alistair Campbell. I remember talking to a number of people. Berlusconi, you see, was my very, very good friend. We fell out. We had a massive argument over the use of Aviano and the Italian air bases. And he said to me, but we have no choice. We have no choice. We have to give the base. I said, fuck you. We don't have to give the bases there. You do not have to. Austria didn't. So why on earth should Italy? But he said, no, I'm under pressure. I'm under pressure from the Americans to use the bases there. What then happened was that I put him under so much pressure that Aviano Air Force bases were only used for refueling purposes. The aircraft that took off from Aviano were not allowed to carry bombs. And that's the best that I could do there. I also protected the American embassy, the British embassy. The Italians, of course, had a free hand because I issued them with visa. Ennio Remondino from Rai Television, I issued them with a visa. And Christian Amanpour, she also was allowed to come in, my good friend there. Now, there was talk of someone wanting to kidnap her and take a hostage. I put a stop to that straight away. Remember, I am a General Pravillini in Srpska Dobrovoljačka Garda. And, you know, effectively, I said to Željka, this woman is under our protection. If anything happens to her, you and I are going to pay the consequences in due course, leaving aside that she's a wonderful person and very, very impartial, unlike Arnold van Linden of Sky, who told me, I am on the side of the Croats and the Bosnians. And I said, well, then you can fuck off from Serbia. That's exactly what I told him. And I had, withdrew his pass for Belgrade. I had that withdrawn and sent him to bloody Banja Luka or wherever the hell he went to, in due course there. So that's what needs to be understood. Why did I protect the British embassy, the Canadian and the American embassy? I said to Milosevic, to Slobodan, I said to Željka, listen, all wars have an end game. Even the 100 Years' War ended in 100 years. What are we going to do after? Let's think after that. We're all going to be in peace. We're all going to be friends again, Croats, which is exactly what's happened now. We're all back to semi-normal, except the situation in Kosovo, which we'll deal with in due course there. And if we'd have destroyed those embassies, if we'd have attacked those there, the consequences would have been far more serious. Serbia's a small country, few million people only. We can't fight the whole bloody world there. And that's how, by protecting those embassies and making sure, and I had men from the Srpska Dobrovoljačka Garda, protect. I even had one feeding the cat at the embassy in Belgrade, in the British embassy there. And that's what, let me tell you also about Željka, because you need to understand things that people don't understand about him there. Why he would have been president of Serbia. Milosevic and him got on very well. Who we didn't get on well was Mladic. What Mladic was doing, I mean, in all fairness, he was a military man, but what kind of military? Where the hell did he go to school? Which military school? What Željko said was that with Mladic was withdrawing his forces from Bosnia and leaving tanks and arms there intact without destroying them. You're supposed to destroy them. I mean, I'm not a military man. I didn't go to Sandhurst, but Jesus Christ, I know that, during the wartime, all bicycles, cars have to be deactivated so that the enemy can't use it. He was doing that. He said, what kind of idiot is this man here? He said, I'm having nothing to do with Mladic. And there was a massive confrontation. Karadzic was a different person. Radovan was a wonderful man there. He was caught up in something that is just simply too much for him there. He's, at the end of the day, he's a psychiatrist, and I said to him, Rado, why don't you bloody start, psychiatry yourself first? Start with you, before you go to others, because this is, complete bloody madness there. Milosevic and Arkan got on well together. There was never any issues. The only issue that arose was in 1999 when the Serbian Guard of Volunteers, Srpska Dobrovoljska Garda, were narađenje from the commandant to go down to Peć and to start activities there. So let me tell you what happened there. Why we withdrew the men. I withdrew the men from that there. I said, Željka, what you've done, you've ordered the men there in accordance with the rules of war and engagement of war, and what they're going to do. But can I ask a question, please? Koji to plati? Who is going to pay for that there? He said, well, of course, the government. I said, have you asked? Because it's 1,000 German marks per week. There's 2,000 men deployed going down on the way to the Kosovo border to Peć, near where Željka was born. I said, have you asked Slobo? Because we don't have the money to pay these. We might be able to have the money for a week, but what about afterwards? These people want bonuses and everything. He said, of course they'll pay. I said, I'm going to call him and we're going to find. So I called Milosevic. I said, look, the men have gone down there. He said, no. He said, that is not the instructions. I said, but the instructions from your military were to assist, with protecting the borders down there. He said, well, we're not paying for them. We went to Dafina as well. And of course, she'd already stolen a whole heap of money and probably killed her husband as well. That she wasn't paying. So I said, Željka, nema pare. We don't have the money for this. He said, well, Đovani, give the order to bring the men back. And that's why they came back. And there was no massacres. No one was killed. No nothing there. Based upon that there, Milosevic did not want any bloodshed that was more than what was necessary in an engagement of war. And at the end of the day, the war of NATO was an air war. We didn't have the capabilities to beat NATO, more than 20 countries there. We just simply didn't. We did the best we could. And you have seen the letter that I wrote to the European Commission on that there, and you can use that. Is it true? I don't know. Did Serbia receive that money? I don't know. If they did, where is it? I will be asking Alex Vučić where the hell that money is. Because remember, I know him from 1993 when he was a member of the Radical Party with Šešelj and all them, that mob, that crew there.
Well, this was something, let's say, this was something special you just mentioned about NATO aggression against Yugoslavia, and we certainly didn't know about these details regarding Arkan's Tigers and what was going on here in Belgrade during that aggression. So, can you tell us something more about Arkan? Because you said you're general of Serbian volunteer guard, Srpska Dobrovoljačka Garda. What was going on in Erdut?
Well, in Erdut was the training ground for, I went there a number of times there to inspect the troops. Not that I even knew how to inspect, but I'm a general pravilinja, and therefore I have to be with Željka. Željka does not drink. He's completely total teetotal. Even at his wedding, he only drank water and inalcoholic drinks there. He doesn't smoke, doesn't take drugs, and doesn't have